The situation in the northwest of the country, of Syria, is that you've got 3.5 million people there now, including 1.5 million who've been herded in from the rest of Syria. So it's a real, it's a sort of kettle situation.
There's no reason you can see that somebody should be concerned about that. And I tell you why, because obviously there are concerns sometimes about groups.
The point is not to give the aid to the rebel groups. The point is to get the aid to the people. We've urged a twin-track approach. Of course, the Syrian government should be doing much more of what is called cross-line aid, across the conflict line, because at the moment, the official aid channels that go through Damascus don't reach the northwest of the country. Secondly, we need direct aid into the northwest of Syria, independent of the government, cross-border. And that's where the NGOs and other groups become absolutely key, because we serve the people directly, independent of the governing authorities. As you say, there are multiple of them in the northwest of the country.
Okay. David Miliband, thank you very much. Now then, if you can't sit still, you keep fidgeting, you have difficulty focusing on a task, you're impulsive, disorganized, then it is possible that you have ADHD. Perhaps it's just never been diagnosed. It is, of course, also possible you're just exhibiting normal human characteristics. There has been a surge in the number of adults who have concluded that they have ADHD, and according to data from NHS Digital, the number of people waiting for an assessment has grown steadily in recent months. So is it justified, or is it just a contagious idea that will take resources away from those who genuinely need help? Well, both my guests are from or associated with King's College London. Professor Dr. Emily Siminoff is Professor of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry there. Professor Dinesh Bugra is Emeritus Professor of Mental Health and Cultural Diversity. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Now, I think, Professor Bugra, you think that too many people are wrongly self-diagnosing with ADHD.
I think there is a problem. I mean, we need to bear in mind that ADHD is quite a serious condition, and therefore it needs to be diagnosed seriously, not in a flippant way. And one of the big challenges really is that quite often people go on the net, fill in a questionnaire which tells them that they've got ADHD, which reflects, it takes away the seriousness of the situation, because the diagnosis needs to be made by professionals who know what's going on and who can then set things in place which allows people to get help that they need.
Okay. Professor Siminoff, how do you feel about these self-diagnoses that we often seem to hear about now?
Yes, well, I would first of all agree with Dinesh that diagnosis needs to be made by professionals with expertise in diagnosing ADHD, and in this case particularly in adults. That's consistent with NICE guidance, and it may be helpful for people to complete what are screening questionnaires on the internet that will help them to discern whether some of the things they're experiencing might be related to ADHD. But the next step really is to get a professional opinion about that. And Sarah, one of the things you said was there seems to have been a burgeoning rise in adults thinking they may have ADHD. We know that, for example, the pandemic and the stresses that it's caused for people in needing to work in different ways may have altered, for example, the structure of people's everyday lives, so they're more aware of difficulties in concentrating. Those may be part of just normal variation, everyday differences between one person and another, or they may be part of ADHD, and really the only way to answer that is with a high quality in-person assessment.
Okay, but so Professor Bugra, do you think, oh for goodness sake, will you all just, this is just normal human behavior when you hear somebody saying that they've got ADHD, or do you actually often see people that you look at someone and you think, do you know what, I'd diagnose you with ADHD?
I think that's a very good point, because quite often we try and make sense of our normal behavior as we see them. And, you know, sometimes you, for example, if you get out of the bed on the wrong side and you have a, you know, not so good day, that does not mean that you're depressed. You're just having a bad day. But there is often a danger in trying to give it a label, medicalize it, and you know, so normal human emotions are being medicalized, which is quite problematic not only for the individuals, but also for clinicians.
Okay, Professor Semenoff, so what would you say to somebody, an adult, who says, do you know what, I filled out this on screening online and it says I've got ADHD?
So I would take it seriously and ask them more about what's going on for them. There are 4 components that we need to think about when someone has ADHD. First of all, whether they have the symptoms, which Sarah, you described very nicely in the beginning, and that's around overactivity, problems with concentrating, and difficulties with impulse control. Secondly, we look at whether it's happening across different settings and situations, like when you go to work or you're out with your friends doing leisure activities for children in school. And so when Dinesh talks about getting out of bed the wrong way, of course, if it's just happening in some settings, we wouldn't be thinking of it as
We haven't
ADHD.
got much time, and I'm keen for you to get to the final points.
So I think we've now recognized that ADHD is more common in adults than we used to appreciate. And I'm not surprised to hear that there are more adults who are thinking about whether this diagnosis fits their description.
Professors Emily Semenoff and Dinesh Bogra, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Now, when the Radio Times asked a panel of television experts in 2019 what was the greatest British sitcom of all time, they named 40 Towers. It's nearly 40 years old, and only 12 half-hour episodes exist, but it is considered a comedy masterpiece, which is why the idea of a remake sounds so risky. But in its favour, the planned sequel will be written by John Cleese, along with his daughter, and be made by the US studio Castle Rock, behind programmes like Seinfeld. Some of its jokes, though, may not be so funny to modern ears.
Don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right. So, it's all forgotten now, and let's hear no more about it. So that's 2 egg mayonnaise, a prawn Goebbels, a Hermann Goring, and 4 Colditz settlers. Now, wait a moment, I got a bit confused here. Sorry, I got a bit confused because everyone keeps mentioning the war. So could you... What's the matter?
It's all right.
Is there something wrong?
Will you stop talking about the war?
Me? You started it?
We did not start it.
Yes, you did. You invaded Poland.
John O'Farrell is a comedy writer who worked on Spitting Image and helped to bring Mrs. Doubtfire to Broadway. John, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What did you think when you heard John Cleese and his daughter were going to do this?
I have to say I read this story with a sorry sigh, thinking, oh no, 40 Towers was so perfect in its day. And those episodes meant so much to me as an aspiring comedy writer. In my teens, I bought the scripts and read them over and over again. And back then, they were like these 12 perfect comedy gems. So my first reaction was, oh, please don't add a big fat turkey to the crown jewels of British comedy.
Right, because you think it's undoable. You cannot reboot something like that.
Well, I mean, the very fact that Cleese stopped at 12 was always held up to us as comedy writers of a measure of its greatness. He quit while he was ahead. It was a lesson to all of us not to try and wring every last drop out of a comedy premise. So, yeah, I worry that the legacy will be tainted and the brand devalued by having this crappy postscript. It'll be like a fat Elvis forgetting his words at Vegas.
Okay, but let's just be clear. It is possible to do it, is it? I mean, you obviously think it's unlikely, but it is possible to do it.
Oh, well, look, he has every right to it. I mean, I would say that the character of Basil Fawlty was co-created by Connie Boo for the BBC, so I hope he hasn't presumed this is just his to do whatever he wants with. But if he has that base covered, he has every right to write whatever he wants, and we shouldn't dismiss writers because they get old. But if their work is stale and retreading old ideas, then they, or I should probably say we, actually need to move over and make way for new comic voices.
Okay,
You know,
what
a good
about the
joke has a
style of-
surprise at the end, you know.
Okay, well,
and I can't imagine rebooted 40 Towers being all that surprising.
Oh, really? Okay, because I was wondering about the style.
My bloatedness got so bad I looked 7 months pregnant. My partner Dan forced me to go.
I don't know whether it's just me being a biased British person, but I think that was a much more emotional and poetic speech than the one he gave to Congress. But it's not something we should particularly worry about as long as he did. He talked as well, didn't he, about evil a lot He talks about the evil in human nature that we can sadly witness in various places around the world, not just in what's happening in Ukraine, but freedom will win. Freedom, freedom, freedom. It was repeated time and again, as much as thank you was.
Yes, he did. And this is what we all talk about. This is what we all feel, because we have no other options. We fight for everything that we have because this is the country where Ukrainians have to live. As I say, because I work with the refugees a lot. People didn't choose to be refugees. They're extremely grateful to Great Britain.
And a lot of them are refugees inside Ukraine, aren't they? As well as leaving.
Yes, they are settled. Yeah, so they're living in other people's houses. They left their own belongings, so everything they've been working for all their lives. So, but no one wants to be even a welcome refugee. They want to go back and live the life that they imagine for themselves. So yes, we're fighting for the freedom. This is the overwhelming feeling that we all have.
And we'll talk more after the break, but it was very striking that thank you was repeated and repeated, freedom was repeated and repeated, and another word kept leaping out at me: victory. So important to give people an end point. He can't say the date, but he's saying we will get there. He's keeping hope alive, isn't he?
Yes, we all universally believe in our victory. We have faith. We don't doubt it for a second, for a minute. And I speak on behalf of many people who I work with, the volunteers and people who work in various
that from them.
Yes, we all think likewise.
Well, let's talk more in a moment. Thank you for being with us today, Svetlana, making all the difference. Svetlana Opanasenko from the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. Just to let you know that President Zelensky is now leaving Westminster Hall. He announced in that speech, didn't he, that he's going to meet King Charles. He met William and Catherine, as he called them, when he came here a couple of years ago, but he's going to meet the King, and then he'll go on later to Dorset, to Lulworth Camp in Dorset, where he'll meet some of the Ukrainians being trained by UK forces, I should say, UK forces. More in a moment. It's your calls as well. If you want to put a question or a thought to Svetlana, do feel free to do so on 0345 6060 973. It's 1:47.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Conservative MP and now new chairman of the Conservative Party, Greg Hand. Do you agree that anyone earning 30 odd grand a year, which most nurses are, using food banks, they've got something wrong with their own finances?
I think you're asking me to comment on my new deputy. What I would say is that Lee, I think, is a fantastic asset to the party. I'm not going to comment on things that have been said in the past.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
Pay, get paid. Pay, get paid. With Barclaycard, get paid in store. Get paid online. Get paid from Switzerland. Cashflow. Pay suppliers on time, every time. Become their favourite client. Get thank you gift basket and macaroons. Get cash back on business spend. New espresso machine in staff room. Oh, paperwork. Wait, free accounting software. Search Barclaycard Payments. The payment part is just the start. Offers now available. The approval of your application depends on financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply. Free accounting software provided by FreshBooks for selected Barclaycard customers only.
Right, that's it. We need a bigger car.
Okay. Smart speaker, what's the best family car?
In reviews, the Hyundai Tucson has been named the best family car.
Oh, they're nice. Okay, search offers on a Hyundai Tucson.
The Tucson Hybrid comes with up to £1,750 towards your deposit and 7.3% APR representative. And it's Hyundai, by the way.
Discover the award-winning Hyundai Tucson Hybrid. It's the dawn of a new Hyundai. Car Buyer Award 2023 ends 31st of March. Hyundai UK is a credit broker, not a lender. Terms apply.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. You finally have a chance to see the definitive new production of Rodgers and Hammerstein's masterpiece, Oklahoma. Winner of the Tony Award for Best Musical Revival and this year's Evening Standard Theatre Award for Best Musical. It's a triumph, says The Observer. An absolute knockout, raves The Telegraph. Limited season from the 16th of February at Wyndham's Theatre. Book now at oklahomawestend.com.
HS2 construction work is taking place on the A501 Euston Road. From the 20th of February until summer 2023, there will be lane closures between the Euston Underpass and Eversholt Street. All roads in the surrounding area will be very busy and journeys will take longer, so please check before you travel. To plan alternative routes in London, search HS2 Travel Advice. or visit the HS2 website to find out more about the project.
Ooh, heard about Look Mum No Hands? Their cafe / bar / bicycle workshop. They got a domain and built a website with GoDaddy to showcase their services. Ain't that right, Matt from Look Mum No Hands?
You're telling me. So now more customers can find us online.
And now their business is riding high.
Nice.
Thanks. Take the next step on your business journey with GoDaddy.
In these uncertain times, who do you trust with your stocks and shares ISA?
I trust the power of my crystal ball.
I put my head in the sand hoping it will all go away. Go away?
I trust to Best Invest. With free investment coaching, expertly managed ready-made portfolios and low share trading fees, why wouldn't I? Open an ISA at bestinvest.co.uk and get up to £1,000 cash back when you transfer to us. You work hard for your money. Best Invested. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Got an untaxed car? You could hide it in a hedge or sneak it in a skip. Maybe cloak it with some cones or outfox us with a fence. You might try to cover it, smother it, bury it in sticks, park it down the lane, tuck it down the drain, stash it in a bus stop, paint it like a mountaintop. But whatever you try, you will always find that cars are hard to hide, but easy to tax. So don't risk it. Tax it with DVLA at gov.uk/DVLA/taxit.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, with Sheila Fogarty.
I'm joined in the studio by Svetlana Opanasenko. I'll talk to you in just a moment on 0345 6060 973. Your thoughts on what you heard listening to Volodymyr Zelensky. And I'm also conscious that an hour before, at the very beginning of Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer, in a very peaceful series of questions to Rishi Sunak on the subject of Ukraine and our support for Ukraine, talked about speaking with one voice across Parliament, speaking with one voice on this issue of continuing support for Ukraine. Do you speak with that voice? Do you still very much support what the British government is choosing to do? Huge support, moral and otherwise, for Ukraine. Let me know your thoughts on 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. You can tweet at LBC. Svetlana Opanasenko is still with me in the studio for a few more minutes from the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. You were talking to me in the break just there about the excitement of some of your other volunteers who work with Ukrainian families and refugees. Desperate, even if they could just catch a glimpse of him in the street.
Absolutely. So I got texts from fellow friends, and we were all trying to find out if he will maybe go to the Ukrainian cultural center at Holland Park, or he will go to the protest tonight. So where will we be able to see him? Because the dream of everyone here is to see him at Trafalgar Square when we have won over Russia. This is the place where we all gathered at the start of the war back in February and March. It was full of Ukrainians and all the British people. And this is the dream that we would like to have, to see him there. I don't know if President will hear me, but we are waiting for him.
Well, we often, for security reasons, don't get the detail of exactly where they'll be at any given time. I mean, it was a surprise to all of us mid-morning that he was coming here at all, wasn't it? He said he will meet the King, King Charles, and that will be, he said in his speech, a special moment. And it's more than special. I mean, it's clearly special to him, but it's more than special, isn't it? These are significant messages to send out to the world.
Yes, exactly, because, well, we know who the king is for Great Britain, so it's very symbolic that he's meeting him. So the last time it was William and Kate, so he's up the level. And we also know that the current king has his own views on a lot of, let's say, situations in the world, which is kind of, I'm sure he would wish, to speak more.
I think he'll be free to express support for Zelensky and for Ukraine. It's just he can't talk about British politics in the same way, exactly. and other areas. But I think in this, it's so clear that we are on the side of the Ukrainians, isn't it? I think he'll be safe to say a few supportive
William and
words.
Kate came to the Ukrainian cultural center back in spring.
That's right, at the beginning.
So they also have showed.
Well, who knows? Who knows? He may appear there. He may.
You never know. I mean, but we are grateful.
Yes.
We can feel that the support continues.
And tell me about, if you're happy to, about your own parents. Did they come to Britain, or did they just go away from where they were to somewhere else in Ukraine?
No, they are with me now. They were in Kiev at the start of the war, and I was following it closely because not everyone did, but I did think that actually there will be an invasion. I was reading the news and I trusted the American intelligence, and I also followed some of the Russian news when some, let's say, decisions that he took in Duma, which kind of hinted that it might happen. But they stayed and they were trapped in Kiev for the first couple of weeks. When you remember,
there was that huge, great
yes,
convoy of vehicles.
It was very, very stressful because I don't remember how much I slept, probably barely a couple of hours a night. And I started to lose sight because it was always on the phone. So they had to spend most of their time down in the bomb shelter, which was the parking lot of their apartment. But they couldn't leave because they're older and because of all the traffic jams, and then the trains were also crowded. So
and the bridges were being destroyed, some of them, weren't they?
Yes, and their apartment is actually very close to the main road where the fighting was happening, where the tanks were going, and they could hear that, and some of the men would just sneak out at night and check what was happening.
Yeah, which is brave.
So when they managed to get out to Poland, to Warsaw, I felt relieved, and of course I used the family scheme, and I invited them to come and stay with me and my children. They waited for a while, but I cannot express how happy we were. It was my daughter and I, we were waiting, the plane was delayed, and when they came we were crying because there were two other family, I'm pretty sure they were sponsors, because they were holding kids' toys, and some had like something written on the pieces of paper, and they met families, women with children, because mostly we see women with the children.
You knew, obviously you knew your parents. But
I was already working with the refugees in London at the Ukrainian Center, and so we were just like crying, waiting for them. We were so overwhelmed and happy to have them here, so they're now staying with us.
And what does your daughter ask you about all of this?
Well, she's an active volunteer because she's 20. She studies at Exeter University.
I'm sorry, she's 20. You look about 25 yourself.
Thank you. No, well, she's...
What's in the water in Ukraine?
Well, the magic of freedom.
Wow. So she volunteers, does she, as well?
Yeah, she started to volunteer in Exeter last year, but then she was struggling because she wanted more support. So she came to London and she stayed with us, and she is now also volunteering. She's working at the Ukrainian school, the nursery, where we look after Ukrainian children. So the majority.
Tell me a bit about that, because the family that I know, who I and a couple of friends helped in Liverpool, their daughter Sophia is doing brilliantly at school, and she's a little cracker of a person. She's great, but not every child will be the same. She has great English, so that helps, and she's a very outward, a sort of extrovert child.
Yeah.
How have the children settled? Because they're missing their dads, of course, lots of them.
Yeah, well, they have settled differently, and that's why I will speak a bit, of course, about the Ukrainian school. It's very important because it now, has so many more children from the start of the war. It accepted everyone who came from March onwards to September, because this is probably the only space large enough currently in London where children can speak their own language, then they can find friends and feel safe and secure, because it reminds them of Ukraine. Because British schools were great, some better, some maybe less, but everyone is very accommodating. But nevertheless, the language barrier is very important for the children. So the younger they are, the easier it is. But if you're like older and you have to pass your exams, etc. So the school is great, and I've been speaking to many of them, because we now have a program of psychological support jointly with the NHS.
And there are lots of people like you who are Ukrainian but speak great English, who could be in those schools.
Yeah, so
doing that work.
why I stayed. I see that I'm useful there, and we always want to do more because we always think that much more can be done compared to people in Ukraine that
and
they're
you want
doing.
their education to be as strong as it can be despite this massive interruption.
Of course, and also I would like them to be happy and to at some point overcome this trauma that children are not supposed to have at their age.
And it inevitably will be, because even if they've come over with just their mum, as is the case with my two friends, the father is in Ukraine, grandparents are in Ukraine, aunties, uncles, friends. Not everybody chooses to leave, so that's
a lot of their dads are actually fighting. I've been talking to them, and they talk to them, but they know they're at the front line, and they're very worried.
Well, Svetlana, thank you so much. Great to meet you, and thank you for joining me to listen to that extraordinary speech together.
Thank you for having me.
My
That
pleasure.
was a pleasure, yeah.
Unforgettable. Unforgettable. Thank you, Svetlana Opanasenko. Your calls after the news. It's 2 o'clock.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 2 o'clock, Volodymyr Zelensky has told the UK Parliament freedom will win. The Ukrainian president has addressed MPs and peers in Westminster Hall during his first visit to Britain since the war with Russia began.
London has stood with Kyiv since day one. From the first seconds and minutes of the full-scale war, Great Britain, you extended your...
With rain pushing in from the northwest, a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Sheila Fogarty.
Hello there, good afternoon to you. Well, we have seen some impressive and significant speeches at Westminster Hall over the years, but I don't think I can remember one where such warmth and enthusiasm has been sent in the direction of the Speaker, in this case, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. Your thoughts on what you heard, your thoughts on Britain's continuing and growing support for Ukraine in this war with Russia, forced on it by Russia, and that invasion almost a year ago, just a couple of weeks till the anniversary. Do call on 0345 606 0973, the usual number. You can text 84850. You can tweet at LBC. I'll get to your calls in a moment. Andrew Marr is joining me, who was at Westminster Hall for the Zelensky address to Parliament. I'm tempted to say, you lucky thing. That was extraordinary, Andrew.
Well, it certainly was a moment, Sheila. Absolutely sort of gin-clear hall, sparkling sunlight, quite cold, absolutely rammed with parliamentarians of all stripes jostled together, people from the Labour left and the Tory right all standing together, applauding together. I said a gin-clear atmosphere and a gin-clear message. It was all really about the planes and the pilots. So he's a very, very clever political communicator, clearly, Zelensky. And he, early on in the speech, he was talking about last time he was in London and being shown Churchill's famous armchair in the war rooms from where he gave so many commands. And Zelensky was invited to sit in it and sat in it and couldn't quite think of what to say afterwards. He now realised what he really thought, and it was a great message of defiance. So he moved from Churchill and 1940, and by implication the Battle of Britain, to a moment of great theatre when a box is opened and a Ukrainian Air Force ace's helmet is waved aloft and handed to the Speaker of the Commons, and it reads in Ukrainian, "We have freedom. Give us the wings to defend it." And that comes alongside the announcement that Ukrainian pilots are now going to be trained by British RAF officers on Western fast jets. And that means we are even more deeply into this conflict than we were 2 weeks ago.
I mean, I said when I was speaking about it half an hour ago or so, it was a deeply practical speech on one level, but a deeply poetic one on another level, wasn't it?
Oh yes, this is a man who can speak. And, you know, he listens to the famous speeches for wherever he's going. He makes different speeches in Washington than in London or Brussels or Berlin or anywhere else. This is the first time he's been here, of course, since the war started. Yeah. But there was something undoubtedly Churchillian about it as a moment, partly because, you know, the rest of us are standing there in kind of creased and slightly sagging business suits and dresses and so forth. None of us are exactly fit or in the prime of life. And he was standing there in his fatigues, looking every inch the military commander, telling us what was what.
I mean, I'm going to be hearing in the next hour or so how British people feel about the clear decision that Britain has made to continue to support Ukraine in this way. I mean, the enthusiasm, the welcome, the support from inside that room was palpable from this studio. Well, how did it feel in the room?
Well, it was extraordinary. It was electric is a difficult thing to use because this 900-year-old hall is so enormous. It's not very conducive to electrical currents. Yes. Stony cold, enormous, but a very special atmosphere in it. I would just say one word of slight caution or whatever, which is that we have complete political unanimity across the House of Commons. Everybody is saying the same thing. Everybody is saying Russia must be defeated. Now, quite what that means, nobody explains. And whenever everybody is saying the same thing, a little kind of tiny voice of warning goes off in the back of my head.
A kind of what if, yes, but kind of word of warning.
Yes, but what does actual Russian defeat look like? How does it happen? What follows that? Where are the new lines of demarcation?
And again, in a speech such as the one he was giving, he used the word victory a number of times. He talked about the war coming to an end despite the ongoing pain, tears, lives lost, heroes, all of the stuff that you would expect. But he does talk about victory. He said victory will change the world. And this was one element of the speech where I had a yes but moment. He talked about victory changing the world, and that when that victory comes, that he is certain of, when that victory comes, an aggressor will no longer walk in to X, Y, or Z place without knowing what they're going to get in return, which globally isn't quite true, is it? I mean, there's a very specific reason why Ukraine is getting this level of support.
And to be fair to him, he did say that wars don't end, human evil always returns somehow. But, you know, in the best possible outcome, I guess, which would be the complete collapse of Russian forces, including in Crimea, which is a peninsula much easier to defend, much harder to attack than what's going on the mainland of Ukraine. Just suppose the Russians completely collapse there and Vladimir Putin falls. We still have, and at no point in this conflict do they use nuclear weapons. We still have a nuclear-armed, very angry, very humiliated, very large country, a lot of whose political elites are to the right or in a fascist direction from Putin himself. So what follows Putin? Are we absolutely sure that this is going to be an easier, happier and safer world?
I suppose from Ukraine's perspective, they can't afford to think beyond just getting him out of their land as much as they can when they are the ones losing the lives and crying the tears, I guess.
They are in a different position. They have been attacked and invaded by a ruthless, appalling enemy. And of course, they have to fight to the last inch to defend themselves. And of course, they will say and do everything they can to do that. That's really, really important. All I'm saying is that we in the West should at some point start to think about what is the end game? How does this war end? Because all wars end eventually.
And there's been something, I mean, I know we don't see everything, for obvious reasons, we don't see everything going on the front lines, but there's been something of a winter hiatus, hasn't there? And that will end with spring, no doubt.
But we know that the Russians are mobilizing huge numbers of fresh troops. I say fresh troops, they appear to be barely trained, they appear to be thrown at Ukrainian positions to be mown down. People who've seen that fantastic German war film set in 1918, All Quiet on the Western Front, will have some idea of what it actually means to be mown down on the battlefield. What tanks actually do to real human living bodies. That's what's going on out there. And I say again, that war, the 1918 war, ended in a way which produced the rise of the Nazis and made the world more dangerous. So we have to think very, very clearly, how does this end?
And just a final thought on him, on Zelensky himself. I can't think of a recent political leader that has, I was going to say enjoyed, it's not the right word, is it? But has prompted so much reaction from the world.
Well, I was standing surrounded by sort of parliamentarians, and we were talking about previous such events, because of course the last time this hall was used in a big way was for the funeral of the Queen. But going further back, Obama addressed both houses of Parliament there, and so did Nelson Mandela. And it was the Nelson Mandela visit that people were connecting this to, somebody who had come seeing real suffering, real hardship, real pain and death on the front line of a titanic world struggle, and Mandela seems to be the nearest equivalent in my lifetime.
That's a good example, a good comparison. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Always good to talk to you. Andrew Marr, LBC presenter, of course, Monday to Thursday from 6. You can hear him this evening. He was inside Westminster Hall for that Zelensky address to Parliament. Let's just remind ourselves of a little of it. If you're just joining us here at LBC and you didn't hear it live, you can also see it on Global Player if you missed it. He is going to meet the King at some point this afternoon. We think, yes, at Buckingham Palace, I think is the plan. Have a listen to something he said. It was, I thought, rather beautiful.
Today, I will have the honor to be received by His Majesty the King.
King Kong.